My fiancée said I'm staying at my ex's house tonight, deal with it. After our fight, but when I discovered what she was really planning, I realized our entire relationship was a lie. Subscribe to the channel and like the video to see more stories like this 32 years old. That number represents dedication, hard work, and building something meaningful from scratch. My name is Marcus, and for the past 8 years I've been working as a software engineer at a tech company in Austin, Texas. My salary of $95,000 a year allowed me to buy a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood, complete with a backyard where I planned to build the family I'd always dreamed of. I met Sarah 3 years ago at a coffee shop downtown. She was 28, worked as a marketing coordinator, and had this infectious laugh that could light up any room. We clicked immediately. She was smart, ambitious, and seemed to share my vision of a future together. After 2 years of dating, I proposed to her last Christmas with my grandmother's engagement ring, a vintage piece worth about $8,000 that had been in my family for generations. Sarah said yes, without hesitation, tears streaming down her face as she kissed me under the Christmas tree we decorated together in our living room. We set the wedding date for this coming September, just 6 months away. Everything seemed perfect. We'd already put down deposits on the venue, booked the photographer, and sent save the dates to 150 guests. But looking back now, I realized there were signs I chose to ignore. Sarah had been married before, briefly, to a guy named Jake when she was 24. The marriage lasted only 18 months, and according to her, it ended because they were too young and incompatible. She assured me they remained on friendly terms, which I respected. I believed in mature, adult relationships where exes could coexist peacefully. Jake lived about 20 minutes away in downtown Austin. He worked in real estate and, from what Sarah told me, was doing quite well for himself. She mentioned him occasionally, usually when she'd run into mutual friends who would bring up his name, or when she needed to coordinate something related to their divorce paperwork that apparently still wasn't completely finalized. "It's just paperwork stuff," she'd always say with a wave of her hand. You know how lawyers drag things out. I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? Sarah had never given me a reason to doubt her honesty. She was always upfront about her past, introduced me to her friends and family, and seemed genuinely excited about our future together. We spent almost every evening together, either at my place or hers, planning our wedding and talking about having kids. The first real sign something was off came about 2 months ago. Sarah started getting text messages at odd hours, late at night when we were watching movies, early in the morning before she was fully awake. When I'd glance over, she'd quickly turn her phone face down or slip it into her purse. "Work stuff," she'd explain. "You know how demanding my boss can be." But her boss was a woman named Linda, who Sarah had always described as respectful of work-life boundaries. It seemed strange that Linda would be texting at 11 p.m. on a Sunday, but I didn't press the issue. Then there were the mysterious errands. Sarah, who used to spend her Saturday mornings with me drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, suddenly had a lot of things to take care of around town. Doctor appointments, meetings with wedding vendors, catching up with old friends I'd never heard her mention before. "I'm just trying to get everything sorted before the wedding," she'd say, giving me a quick kiss before disappearing for 3 or 4 hours. I started noticing changes in her behavior too. She became more defensive about small things, more critical of decisions I made around the house. When I suggested we start looking at honeymoon destinations, she seemed disinterested. "Let's just focus on getting through the wedding first," she'd say. But the biggest change was in our physical relationship. Sarah, who had always been affectionate and intimate, started pulling away. She'd go to bed earlier, claiming she was exhausted from wedding planning. When I'd try to initiate intimacy, she'd find excuses, headaches, stress, being too tired. 3 weeks ago, I decided to surprise her at her workplace with lunch. I'd done this before, and she always loved the gesture. But when I arrived at her office building, the receptionist told me Sarah had called in sick that morning. I tried calling her, but it went straight to voicemail. I drove to her apartment, thinking maybe she was really ill and needed help, but her car wasn't in the parking lot. When she came home that evening, looking perfectly healthy, I asked where she'd been. "I was sick this morning, but I felt better around lunch, so I went to run some errands," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I told you I had a lot to take care of." That night, lying in bed next to her, I felt a knot forming in my stomach. Something was definitely wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Sarah was still wearing my ring, still talking about our September wedding, still saying she loved me every day. But for the first time in our relationship, I found myself wondering if the woman I was planning to marry was telling me the truth. The breaking point came last Friday night, and I never could have predicted how a simple disagreement about dinner plans would unravel everything I thought I knew about the woman I loved. Last Friday started like any other day. I came home from work around 6 p.m., expecting to find Sarah getting ready for our dinner reservation at Romano's, an Italian place we'd been wanting to try. We'd made these plans 3 days earlier, and I was looking forward to a relaxing evening together after a particularly stressful week at work. But when I walked through the front door, Sarah was sitting on the couch in her pajamas, scrolling through her phone with an expression I'd never seen before, cold and distant. "Hey babe, aren't you going to get ready? Our reservation is at 7:30, I said, loosening my tie. She didn't look up from her phone. "I'm not really in the mood for dinner out tonight." I sat down beside her, concerned. "Are you feeling okay? We can always order takeout takeout if you're not feeling well. That's when she finally looked at me, and there was something in her eyes that made my stomach drop. Marcus, I need some space tonight. Space? I repeated, confused. What do you mean? Sarah set her phone down and turned to face me fully. I mean, I need time to think about us, about this whole situation we're in. What situation? Sarah, what's going on? Did something happen at work? She let out a laugh that had no humor in it. This isn't about work, Marcus. This is about how suffocating this relationship has become. The word suffocating hit me like a punch to the gut. Suffocating? Where's this coming from? Yesterday you were excited about finalizing the catering menu. Maybe that's the problem, she said, standing up and pacing to the window. Maybe I'm tired of having every aspect of my life planned out and controlled. Controlled? Sarah, we make decisions together. That's what couples do. She turned around, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. Do we, Marcus? Or do you make suggestions and I just go along with them because it's easier than arguing? I stood up too, trying to process what was happening. I don't understand where this is coming from. If you've been unhappy, why didn't you tell me? We can work through whatever this is. That's exactly what I'm talking about, she said, her voice rising. You immediately want to work through it and fix it like I'm some problem that needs solving. Because I love you, I said, my own voice getting louder. Because we're supposed to get married in 4 months. Because I thought we were happy. Sarah's expression softened for just a moment, and I thought maybe we could get past whatever this was. But then her phone buzzed on the coffee table, and when she glanced at it, that cold look returned to her face. I'm going out tonight, she said, picking up her phone. Okay, fine. Where do you want to go? We can skip Romano's and do whatever you want. No, Marcus, I'm going out alone. I need to clear my head. Something about the way she said it, combined with how quickly she'd grabbed her phone, made alarm bells go off in my head. Where are you going? Does it matter? You're not my keeper. I'm your fiancé. Of course it matters. Sarah, what the hell is happening right now? She walked toward the bedroom, and I followed her. She started pulling clothes out of her dresser, not just an outfit for the evening, but enough clothes for a few days. Are you packing? I asked, my heart starting to race. I'm staying somewhere else tonight, maybe a few nights. I need time to think. Where? I demanded. At your sister's? Your friend Jessica's? Sarah stopped packing and looked at me with an expression that I'll never forget. Part guilt, part defiance, part something else I couldn't identify. I'm staying at Jake's. The name hit me like a physical blow. Jake? As in your ex-husband Jake? Yes. Sarah, you can't be serious. She zipped up her overnight bag and slung it over her shoulder. I'm completely serious. Jake offered to let me stay in his guest room while I figure things out. When did you talk to Jake about this? When did you even talk to Jake at all? For the first time since this conversation started, Sarah looked uncomfortable. We've been in touch recently about the divorce paperwork. Divorce paperwork that should have been finalized years ago? It's complicated, Marcus. There were some financial things we needed to sort out. I felt like I was drowning. Sarah, please don't do this. If you need space, stay at your sister's place. Hell, I'll go stay at my brother's for a few days if you need the house to yourself. But don't go to your ex-husband's house. Why? Because you don't trust me? Because it's completely inappropriate? Because you're wearing my engagement ring while you pack a bag to go sleep at another man's house? Sarah looked down at the ring on her finger, and for a moment, I thought she might take it off right there. Instead, she looked back up at me with cold determination. Jake understands me in ways you never have. He doesn't try to control every aspect of my life or plan out my future without asking what I want. What you want? Sarah, I asked you to marry me. You said yes. What exactly do you want that I'm not giving you? Freedom, she said simply. The freedom to make my own choices without having to justify them to someone who thinks he knows what's best for me. Going to your ex-husband's house isn't freedom, Sarah. It's betrayal. She headed toward the front door and I followed her, desperate to understand what was happening to my life. Sarah, please, let's talk about this like adults. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. She turned around at the door, her hand on the handle. Maybe that's the problem, Marcus. Maybe not everything is something that can be fixed. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm going to Jake's house tonight, and you're going to have to deal with it. The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. I stared at her, this woman I'd planned to spend my life with, and realized I didn't recognize her at all. Deal with it? I repeated quietly. Yes, deal with it. I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions, and I don't need your permission. Before I could respond, she was out the door, walking toward her car with her overnight bag. I stood in the doorway, watching the woman I loved drive away to spend the night at her ex-husband's house. As her taillights disappeared around the corner, I realized that everything I thought I knew about Sarah, about us, about our future together, might have been a lie. And the most terrifying part was that I had no idea what I was going to discover when I started looking for the truth. I didn't sleep at all Friday night. I kept checking my phone, hoping Sarah would text me, maybe say she'd made a mistake and was coming home. But there was nothing. Complete silence. Saturday morning, I drove to her apartment. Her car wasn't there. The reality that she'd actually spent the night at Jake's house hit me like a truck. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at her empty parking spot, trying to process what was happening to my life. That's when I decided I needed answers. I started with social media. I'd never felt the need to investigate Sarah before, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Her Facebook and Instagram looked normal. Photos of us together, wedding planning posts, nothing suspicious. But then I noticed something I'd overlooked before. Jake's name appeared in her comment sections more frequently than I'd realized. Not just recent comments, but going back months. Innocent enough individually, but together they painted a picture of ongoing communication I hadn't been aware of. Under a photo she'd posted of us at dinner 6 weeks ago, Jake had commented, "Looks like a nice place. We should check it out sometime." We? What did we mean? I scrolled through more posts, and the pattern became clearer. Jake wasn't commenting like an ex-husband who occasionally touched base. He was commenting like someone who was actively involved in her life. On a post about wedding dress shopping, "You always had great taste. I'm sure you'll look beautiful." On a photo of our engagement ring, "Classic choice. Some things never change." The comments felt too familiar, too intimate for someone who was supposedly just handling divorce paperwork with her. But what really made my blood run cold was what I found when I clicked on Jake's profile. He'd posted a photo 3 days ago at a restaurant downtown. The caption read, "Great catching up with an old friend over dinner." In the background, barely visible but unmistakable, was Sarah's bracelet, a distinctive silver piece I'd given her for her birthday last year, sitting on the table across from him. They'd had dinner together 3 days ago. While I was working late on Thursday night, believing she was at home planning our wedding, she was out having dinner with her ex-husband. My hands were shaking as I screenshot the photo. How many other errands and vendor meetings had actually been secret dinners with Jake? I needed more information. I drove to my brother David's house, knowing I needed someone to talk me through this rationally before I did something stupid. "Dude, you look terrible," David said when he opened the door. "What happened?" I told him everything. The fight, Sarah's announcement, the social media discoveries. David listened without interrupting, his expression growing more concerned with every detail. "Marcus, I hate to say this, but it sounds like she's been having an emotional affair for months, maybe longer. But she's still wearing my ring. She's still planning our wedding. Why would she do that if she's been seeing Jake? Maybe she's been trying to decide between you two. Maybe she needed the security of your relationship while she figured out if things with Jake could work." The thought made me sick. So I've been her backup plan? I don't know, man, but you need to find out the truth before you make any decisions about the wedding. That afternoon, I did something I never thought I'd do. I drove to Jake's neighborhood. I didn't have a plan exactly. I just needed to see for myself what was happening. Jake lived in a modern apartment complex downtown, the kind of place that screamed successful bachelor. Sarah's car was in the visitor parking area. I parked across the street and waited. I felt pathetic, like some kind of stalker, but I was desperate for answers. Around 4 p.m. they came out together, not just walking to their cars, but walking together, talking and laughing like a couple. Jake had his hand on the small of Sarah's back as they walked, the same gesture I'd seen him make in their old wedding photos that Sarah had shown me years ago. They weren't acting like two people handling divorce paperwork. They were acting like two people in a relationship. I followed them at a distance as they drove to a grocery store. Inside, I watched from the next aisle as they shopped together, Sarah pushing the cart while Jake picked out items and put them in. They moved through the store with the easy familiarity of people who'd done this together countless times. At one point, Jake leaned over and whispered something in Sarah's ear that made her laugh and playfully push his shoulder. The gesture was so intimate, so natural, that I had to grip the shopping cart handle to keep my knees from buckling. This wasn't two people figuring out paperwork. This was two people who were clearly still in love. But the real revelation came when they got to the checkout line. Sarah pulled out her wallet to pay, and the cashier smiled at them. "Back again. You two are in here every weekend. When's the big day?" Sarah and Jake exchanged a look that made my heart stop. "Soon," Sarah said with a smile I'd thought was reserved for me. "We're still working out some details." The cashier beamed. "Well, you make a beautiful couple. How long have you been together?" 4 years this month," Jake answered, wrapping his arm around Sarah's waist. 4 years. They'd been together for 4 years, which meant they'd been together the entire time Sarah and I had been dating. I stumbled backward, my vision blurring. 4 years. Our entire relationship had been a lie. I somehow made it back to my car and sat there, hyperventilating. Everything made sense now. The mysterious errands, the late-night texts, the pulling away from physical intimacy. Sarah hadn't left her ex-husband. She'd never left him, which meant I was the other man in my own relationship. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Staying another night at Jake's. Need more time to think. Don't wait up. Don't wait up." Like I was some roommate she was inconveniencing, not the man she was supposed to marry in 4 months. I sat in that parking lot for 2 hours, watching the sunset, trying to figure out what to do with this information. Part of me wanted to storm up to Jake's apartment and confront them both. Part of me wanted to drive home and pretend I'd never seen any of this. But there was another part of me, a part that was growing stronger by the minute, that wanted something else entirely. I wanted to know exactly how long this had been going on. I wanted to know if anything about our relationship had been real. I wanted to know if she'd ever actually planned to marry me, or if I'd just been a convenient cover story for her real relationship. And most importantly, I wanted to figure out how to make sure Sarah faced consequences for what she'd done to me. Because if she thought she could string me along for 3 years while maintaining a secret relationship with her ex-husband, she was about to learn that I wasn't as naive and controllable as she believed. Sunday evening, Sarah finally came home. I'd spent the entire weekend gathering evidence and preparing for this moment moment. Screenshots, printed photos, a timeline I'd created of all her errands that now made perfect sense. I was ready. She walked through the door around 7 p.m. with her overnight bag, looking refreshed and almost glowing. The complete opposite of how someone should look after spending 2 days thinking about their relationship. "Hey," she said casually, as if she'd just been at the grocery store instead of at her ex-husband's house for 2 nights. "Hey," I replied from the couch, my laptop closed beside me, all my evidence organized in a folder on the coffee table. She set down her bag and looked at me. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, Marcus. I'm sure you have. How was your time at Jake's?" Something in my tone must have alerted her because her expression shifted slightly. "It was productive. We talked through a lot of things." "I bet you did." I stood up and picked up the folder. "Funny thing, Sarah, I did some thinking this weekend too." She sat down in the armchair across from me, and I noticed she was still wearing my engagement ring. The audacity of it made my jaw clench. "Marcus, before you say anything, I want you to know that staying at Jake's helped me realize some important things about us." "Oh, I'm sure it did. But before you share your revelations, I have a few questions for you." I opened the folder and pulled out the first screenshot. Jake's restaurant post with her bracelet visible in the background. "Can you explain this photo from Thursday night? You know, the night you told me you were staying home to work on wedding seating charts?" Sarah's face went pale as she looked at the image. "Marcus, I can explain. I'm sure you can. You've gotten really good at explanations over the past few months." I pulled out another screenshot. "How about this comment Jake made on your post 6 weeks ago? We should check it out sometime." Interesting word choice. "We." Marcus, you're taking this out of context. "Am I?" I pulled out printed pages showing months of comments between them, because I've got about 40 more examples of out-of-context communications here. Sarah stood up, pacing toward the window. "Okay, yes, Jake and I have been talking more than I told you, but it's not what you think. Really? Then please, enlighten me. What exactly is it?" She turned to face me, and I could see her calculating her response. "Jake and I, we never really got closure from our marriage. When I met you, I thought I was over him, but being with you made me realize there were still unresolved feelings." Unresolved feelings. I repeated the word slowly. "Is that what we're calling it? Marcus, I love you, but I also never stopped loving Jake." "I know that's hard to hear, but I'm trying to be honest with you now." "Honest? Sarah, you've been lying to me for months, maybe years." I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshot I'd taken of their grocery store receipt, which I'd managed to get from the trash outside Jake's apartment. "You want to explain this grocery receipt from yesterday? 2 steaks, a bottle of wine, and what looks like ingredients for the pasta dish you used to make for me." Her eyes widened. "How did you? Marcus, were you following us? Were you cheating on me?" "It's not cheating if I never meant for it to happen." "So it did happen. You and Jake are together." Sarah's composure finally cracked. "Yes, okay. Yes, we're together. But it's complicated, Marcus. It's not like I planned this." I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. After days of uncertainty, finally having the truth was almost a relief. "How long?" "What? How long have you been back together with Jake?" Sarah sat back down, her head in her hands. "About 8 months." 8 months. I let that sink in. "So when we were booking our wedding venue, you were cheating on me. When we sent save the dates to our families, you were cheating on me. When I gave you my grandmother's ring, you were already back with your ex-husband." "Marcus, please understand. I never meant to hurt you. I was confused. Jake and I, we have this connection." 8 months, Sarah. That's not confusion. That's a choice. Multiple choices. Hundreds of choices to lie to me every single day. I pulled out another piece of paper. A printed conversation I'd found on her laptop that she'd left open at my house weeks ago. I'd thought it was work-related at the time, but looking at it now, it was clearly personal. "You want to explain this email you sent to Jake 3 weeks ago? Quote, Marcus is getting suspicious about my schedule. Maybe we should cool things down until after the wedding." End quote. Sarah's face went white. "You went through my email? You went through 3 years of my life. Answer the question, Sarah. What did you mean by until after the wedding?" She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her hands. When she finally looked up, there was something different in her expression, like she'd made a decision. "Jake and I, we never actually finalized our divorce." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "We're still legally married, Marcus. We never filed the final papers." I stood up so fast I nearly knocked over the coffee table. "You're married? Sarah? You're fucking married?" "Let me explain. You're married to another man, and you accepted my proposal? You've been planning a wedding while you're already married to someone else? The plan was to finalize the divorce before our wedding. Jake agreed to sign the papers." "The plan? Whose plan? You and Jake planned this together?" Sarah was crying now, but I felt no sympathy for her tears. "Marcus, please sit down. Let me explain everything." "I am never sitting down again. Keep talking. I want to hear all of it. Jake and I separated 3 years ago, but we never made it official. When I met you, I thought it was over between us for good. But about a year into our relationship, Jake reached out. He wanted to try again. And you said yes. Not immediately, but eventually. Yes. Marcus, we started seeing each other again, just to see if we could work things out, while you were living with me, while you were wearing my ring, while you were planning our fucking wedding. I was going to choose Marcus. I was trying to figure out which relationship was right for me. I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. I was a backup plan. For 3 years, I was your backup plan while you figured out if you wanted to stay married to Jake. It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I picked up the folder and threw it at her feet, papers scattering across the floor. I have evidence of dates, trips, overnight stays, grocery shopping together like a married couple, which you are. I have proof that you've been lying to me every single day for almost a year. Sarah looked at the scattered papers, then back at me. What do you want me to say, Marcus? I'm sorry. I'm sorry I fell back in love with my husband. I'm sorry I couldn't choose between you two. Your husband. I shook my head. You know what the most pathetic part is? I actually thought I was the one not good enough for you. I thought I was too controlling, too boring, too whatever. But the truth is, you were never mine to begin with. I walked toward the bedroom, and Sarah followed me. Marcus, where are you going? I pulled a suitcase out of the closet and started throwing her things into it. You're leaving. Tonight. Go back to your husband's house, where you apparently belong. Marcus, please. Can't we talk about this like adults? I stopped packing and looked at her. Adults? Sarah, adults don't get engaged to one person while they're married to someone else. Adults don't lie for 3 years about the most basic facts of their existence. I know I messed up, but maybe we can work through this. Maybe we can start over. Start over? I zipped up the suitcase and set it by the door. Sarah, I wouldn't start over with you if you were the last woman on earth. You're a liar, a cheater, and apparently a bigamist. Get out of my house. Sarah picked up her suitcase, tears streaming down her face. At the door, she turned back to me. Marcus, I really did love you. Part of me still does. I looked at her one last time. This woman I'd planned to spend my life with, who'd systematically destroyed 3 years of my life with her lies. Take off my ring. What? Take off my grandmother's ring. Right now. With shaking hands, Sarah slipped the ring off her finger and placed it on the table by the door. Goodbye, Sarah. I hope Jake was worth it. After she left, I sat in my living room, surrounded by the evidence of her betrayal, and realized that for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. But I wasn't done with Sarah yet. Not by a long shot. The first thing I did Monday morning was call our wedding venue. Hi, this is Marcus Thompson. I need to cancel our September wedding reservation. Oh no, I'm so sorry to hear that. Is everything okay? Would you like to reschedule for a later date? Everything's fine. The bride is already married to someone else. There was a long pause. Excuse me? You heard correctly. Please cancel everything and let me know about refund policies. I spent the entire morning making similar calls. The photographer, the caterer, the florist, the band. Each conversation felt like removing a weight from my shoulders. With every vendor I canceled, I felt more free. But the most satisfying call was to my cousin Jennifer, who worked as a paralegal at a family law firm. Jen, I need some legal advice. If someone gets engaged while they're still married to someone else, is that fraud? Marcus, what's going on? Are you okay? I explained the situation, and Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. Holy shit, Marcus. Yeah, that's potentially fraud, especially if there was financial involvement. Did you spend money on wedding expenses? About $15. $1,000 so far. Deposits, her dress, the engagement ring. You need to document everything. And Marcus, if she accepted an engagement ring while legally married to someone else, that could be considered theft by deception in some states. After I hung up with Jennifer, I started documenting every penny I'd spent on our relationship and wedding. The ring, the vacation we took to Mexico where I thought we were celebrating our engagement, dinners out, her share of groceries when she stayed at my place. It added up to nearly $25,000 over 3 years. My phone started ringing around noon. Sarah. Marcus, please pick up. We need to talk. I declined the call. She called 6 more times. On the 7th call, I answered. What? Marcus, I know you're angry, but you can't just cancel our entire wedding without talking to me first. Watch me. I already did. You canceled our wedding? Her voice was panicked. Sarah, there is no our wedding. You're married to Jake. You can't marry me even if I wanted you to, which I absolutely do not. Marcus, please. I know I made mistakes, but I'm willing to fix this. I'll divorce Jake. We can start over. You had 3 years to divorce Jake. You chose not to. You chose to lie to me instead. The time for fixing this was before you decided to live a double life. I'm coming over. We need to discuss this face to face. If you come to my house, I'll call the police. Stay away from me, Sarah. I hung up and blocked her number. That afternoon, I called my parents. I'd been dreading this conversation, but they needed to know before they heard it from someone else. Mom, I need to tell you something about the wedding. Oh, Marcus, I'm so excited. Your father and I were just talking about what to wear. Mom, there's not going to be a wedding. Sarah and I broke up. What? Honey, what happened? Did you two have a fight? These things can be worked out. Mom, Sarah is married to someone else. She has been the entire time we've been together. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted so long, I thought the call had dropped. Mom, Marcus David Thompson, what did you just say to me? I explained everything. My mother, who had always been polite about Sarah but never seemed completely sold on her, was furious. I never trusted her. There was something about her that didn't sit right with me. Your father is going to be livid. Mom, please don't make this a big family drama. I just wanted you to know so you could cancel your travel plans. Cancel our plans? Marcus, we've already bought plane tickets and booked a hotel. Do you know how much money we've spent on this wedding? Send me the receipts. I'm documenting everything. Why are you documenting everything? Because I'm considering legal action. My mother was quiet for a moment. Good. That girl deserves whatever's coming to her. That evening, my brother David came over with pizza and beer. So, how are you holding up? Honestly, better than I expected. I keep waiting for the devastation to hit, but mostly I just feel relieved. Relieved? David, for months I've been feeling like I was losing my mind, like I was paranoid and controlling and not good enough. Finding out the truth almost feels like validation. What are you going to do now? I'm going to make sure she faces consequences for what she did. I talked to Jennifer today about the legal aspects. David raised his eyebrows. You're going to sue her? I'm considering it. She defrauded me, David. For 3 years. That has to have legal consequences. We were interrupted by a knock at the door. Through the peephole, I could see Jake standing on my porch. It's Jake, I told David. Her husband? What does he want? Let's find out. I opened the door, and Jake looked genuinely uncomfortable. Marcus, I'm sorry to bother you. I know this is awkward, but I think we should talk. Talk about what? About Sarah. About this whole situation. David appeared behind me. I'm David, Marcus's brother, and you must be the husband. Jake winced. Yeah, that's me. Look, can I come in? I think there are some things you should know. Against my better judgment, I let him in. Jake sat on the edge of my couch, looking around the living room where his wife had spent countless evenings. First, I want you to know that I had no idea about you until about 6 months ago. What do you mean? Sarah told me she was dating someone casually, but she said it wasn't serious. She said you knew about our situation and were okay with it. David and I exchanged glances. She told you I knew you two were still married? Yeah. She said you were more like friends with benefits, and that you understood she was working things out with me. I felt like I'd been punched. Jake, I proposed to her 6 months ago. We've been planning a wedding for September. I had no idea you even existed until this weekend. Jake's face went pale. She's been planning a wedding? With you? $15,000 worth of wedding plans. Venue, photographer, caterer, the works. Jake put his head in his hands. Oh my God, Marcus, I am so sorry. I had no idea. So, what exactly did Sarah tell you about our relationship? She said you two hung out sometimes, maybe went to dinner occasionally. She said you had feelings for her, but understood that she was married and trying to work things out with me. She's been living here half the time, Jake. She has clothes in my closet. We were shopping for houses together. This is insane. Jake looked up at me. Marcus, I think Sarah has been lying to both of us. David leaned forward. What do you mean, both of you? Sarah told me she wanted to work on our marriage, but she's been distant and secretive for months. Now I know why. She's been juggling 2 relationships. I sat down across from Jake. So what happens now? Are you going to divorce her? Jake was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I mean, finding out she's been engaged to someone else while telling me she wants to save our marriage. It changes everything. Join the club. Jake stood up. Marcus, for what it's worth, I'm sorry this happened to you. If I had known the truth about your relationship, I never would have gotten back involved with Sarah. After Jake left, David and I sat in stunned silence. Dude, David finally said, she was playing you both. Yeah, the question is, what am I going to do about it? My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Marcus, this is Sarah. I got a new phone. Please call me. I can explain everything. I showed the text to David. You're not actually going to call her, are you? I smiled for the first time in days. Oh, I'm definitely going to call her, but not for the reason she thinks. I called Sarah back 3 days later. I'd spent those 3 days consulting with Jennifer's law firm and getting my ducks in a row. Marcus, thank God you called. I've been going crazy. We need to meet and talk this through. We're not meeting anywhere, Sarah, but you're right. We do need to talk. Okay, so you're willing to work things out, Marcus? I know I made mistakes, but I love you. I'm ready to divorce Jake and commit to you completely. I almost laughed. Sarah, I had an interesting conversation with Jake a few days ago. Silence. He told me some fascinating things about what you've been telling him regarding our relationship. Marcus, whatever Jake said, he's lying. He's trying to sabotage us because he doesn't want to lose me. Really? So you didn't tell him I was just a casual friend who knew about your marriage and was okay with it? Another silence. Longer this time. Sarah, you've been lying to both of us. You told Jake I knew about your marriage. You told me you were divorced. You told him our relationship wasn't serious. You told me you wanted to marry me. You've been running 2 completely separate lives. It's not that simple, Marcus. The situation was complicated. No, Sarah. Complicated is having feelings for 2 people. What you did was fraud. Fraud? That's a little dramatic, don't you think? Actually, it's a legal term. I've been consulting with lawyers, and what you did, accepting an engagement ring while married to someone else, taking money for wedding expenses under false pretenses, that's fraud, and possibly theft. For the first time since I'd known her, Sarah was completely speechless. I've documented every penny I spent on our relationship. $25,000, Sarah. $25,000 I spent on someone who was legally married to another man the entire time. Marcus, you can't be serious about taking legal action. It would ruin my life. You should have thought about that before you decided to ruin mine. I made mistakes, but I don't deserve to have my life destroyed over this. You're right. You don't deserve to have your life destroyed. You deserve to face consequences for your choices. There's a difference. I could hear her crying on the other end of the phone. Marcus, please. I'll pay you back every penny. I'll do whatever you want. Just please don't take this to court. Sarah, the money isn't even the point. You stole 3 years of my life. You made me question my sanity for months. You let me plan a future that you knew was impossible. I know, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm sure you are. You're sorry you got caught. I took a deep breath. This was the moment I'd been building toward. Here's what's going to happen, Sarah. You're going to pay me back the $25,000 you took from me under false pretenses. You're going to write a letter acknowledging that you committed fraud and apologizing for your actions. And you're going to stay completely out of my life forever. And if I don't, then I file charges, and this becomes a matter of public record. Your employer finds out. Your family finds out exactly what kind of person you are. Your friends find out. Jake finds out every detail of how you manipulated both of us. That's blackmail. No, Sarah. Blackmail is what you'd call it if I was asking for something I wasn't entitled to. I'm asking for my money back, and an acknowledgement of what you did. That's called justice. There was a long pause. I need time to get the money together. You have 30 days. And Sarah, don't contact me again unless it's to arrange repayment. Any other communication will be considered harassment. I hung up the phone and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete peace. 2 weeks later, I received a cashier's check for $25,000 and a handwritten letter. The letter was 2 pages of excuses and self-justification, but buried in it was what I needed. An admission that she had accepted the engagement ring while knowing she was still married, and an acknowledgement that she had misrepresented her marital status throughout our relationship. I never saw or heard from Sarah again. Jake, surprisingly, reached out a month later. He and Sarah had divorced, and he wanted to thank me for opening his eyes to who she really was. She did the same thing to me that she did to you, he told me over coffee. She's been seeing someone new while telling me she wanted to work things out. I think Sarah just can't handle being alone. That's not your problem anymore, I told him. Or mine. Today, 6 months later, I'm in a completely different place. I bought a motorcycle with some of the money Sarah paid back. Something I'd always wanted to do, but she'd always talked me out of because it was too dangerous. I joined a hiking club and met amazing people who share my interests. I started dating again, but this time I'm taking things slow and actually paying attention to red flags instead of ignoring them. My house feels like mine again. I redecorated the bedroom, bought new furniture, and turned the guest room into a home office. I got promoted at work, probably because I wasn't distracted by constantly worrying about what Sarah was really doing with her time. Most importantly, I learned to trust my instincts again. Those months of feeling like something was wrong weren't paranoia or insecurity. They were my intuition trying to protect me from someone who was systematically lying to me. I learned that love isn't supposed to make you feel crazy. A real partner doesn't make you question your sanity or feel like you're asking for too much when you expect basic honesty. I learned that some people are capable of living completely compartmentalized lives, lying so naturally and consistently that they can maintain multiple relationships without any of the guilt or conflict you'd expect a normal person to feel. But most importantly, I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived having my entire reality turned upside down. I faced the truth instead of living in denial. I stood up for myself instead of accepting crumbs of affection from someone who didn't deserve my love. Sometimes I wonder if Sarah ever thinks about what she lost. A man who loved her unconditionally, who was ready to build a life with her, who would have given her everything she claimed she wanted. She threw that away for what? The excitement of living a double life? The ego boost of having 2 men compete for her attention? But then I remember that wondering about Sarah's motivations is exactly the kind of thinking that kept me trapped in that relationship for months longer than I should have been. Sarah's choices are Sarah's problem now. My job is to build the life I want with someone who actually wants to be in it. What do you think about this story? Have you ever been in a situation where someone you trusted was living a completely different life behind your back? Sometimes the hardest part isn't the betrayal itself, but learning to trust your own instincts again after someone has spent months or years making you question your perception of reality. If you've experienced something similar, I'd love to hear how you rebuilt your confidence and learned to trust again. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and thank you all for reading my story and supporting me through this community.